shocked by Mom's secret love, unveiled a stepsister who inherited our fortune. Hey everyone, Jenna here. If you stumbled across this because you're knee-deep in your own family drama, well, you've found the right spot. Mine's a story that feels like it should be on TV, not playing out in my life. It's got everything: mysterious disappearances, shocking will revelations, and enough family secrets to fill a novel. A bit about me. I'm recently divorced, navigating the stormy waters of co-parenting two spirited kids who I swear are going on 20, not 10 and 8. I work as a high school English teacher, which is ironic because dissecting fictional dramas feels a heck of a lot easier than understanding my own life's plot twists. The whole mess started a few months ago when I got the call that my mom had passed away unexpectedly. It hit like a ton of bricks. Despite the complex strings attached to our relationship, she was still my mom. The woman who, despite her flaws and secret-keeping, which you'll soon hear all about, tried her best in her own way. So, there I was, stuck with the task of organizing a funeral that would quickly turn into a family battleground. Little did I know, this was just the prelude to the avalanche of secrets and lies waiting to tumble out. And let me tell you, nothing could have prepared me for what was about to unfold at the reading of her will. Stick around, it's going to be quite the ride. The day of the funeral dawned gray and dreary, as if the sky itself was mourning, or maybe it just knew a storm was brewing, not in the clouds, but among us, the grieving family. I remember walking into the funeral home, feeling the heavy weight of sadness mixed with a strange undercurrent of tension that seemed to electrify the air. People were hugging, some crying, others merely nodding solemnly. The atmosphere was thick, each of us lost in our own memories of Mom. Tom, my older brother, was already there, which was a surprise since he usually made a point of arriving fashionably late to everything. This time, he wasn't alone. The new girlfriend he brought along was almost half his age, a fact that didn't escape the whispering crowd. Her presence felt like a statement, and from the side eyes and not-so-subtle frowns, it wasn't particularly well received. I kept my opinions to myself, but couldn't help feeling that this was neither the time nor the place for such displays. After the service, which passed in a blur of eulogies and hymns, we gathered at my mother's lawyer's office for the will reading, a moment I anticipated with a knot in my stomach. The room was stark, every click of the clock overly loud as we all sat down, bracing ourselves for what was to come. Mr. Hargrove, Mom's lawyer, looked over his glasses and cleared his throat, his voice formal as he began to read from the document that would reveal Mom's final wishes. To my daughter Jenna, I leave my collection of antique books and personal journals. The list went on, touching on minor assets and sentimental items, but nothing of substantial financial value. I felt a twinge of relief mixed with confusion. It was so like her to be enigmatic even in her bequests. When Mr. Hargrove reached Tom's part, he hesitated, a frown briefly crossing his face. To my son Thomas, I leave my car and some shares in small local businesses. It was almost an afterthought, something that didn't sit right with Tom. I could tell from the tightening of his jaw. But the real shock came last. The remainder of my estate, including the family home and the majority of my financial assets, I leave to Maria Sanchez, my caretaker for the last 5 years. The room went still, deathly silent. Maria? The caretaker? She was practically a stranger to us, and here she was, inheriting what should have been the family's legacy. Accusations flew almost immediately. Tom's face reddened, his voice loud and accusing as he turned to Mr. Hargrove. "This can't be right. There's got to be some mistake, or she manipulated her into this," he exclaimed, his words tinged with disbelief and anger. Maria, who had been standing quietly by the door, seemed small and defensive as all eyes turned to her. "I didn't know," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't expect any of this." I felt numb, torn between grief and growing suspicion. How did Maria end up as the main beneficiary? Was there manipulation involved, or had my mother simply chosen to reward loyalty over blood? These questions swirled in my head as I left the office, the fabric of our family seeming more frayed than I had ever realized. The seeds of doubt were sown, setting the stage for the deep dive I knew I had to take into my mother's relationship with Maria, into a past shrouded in secrets that were now demanding to be brought to light. The days following the will reading were a whirlwind of confusion and whispered phone calls. The family was in chaos, everyone trying to make sense of Mom's decision to leave practically everything to Maria, her caretaker. Despite the initial shock, I found myself driven by a need to understand. If I was going to challenge the will, or even just come to terms with it, I needed to know who Maria really was and what she had meant to my mother. With a mix of reluctance and determination, I decided to visit Maria. I found her at the house, my childhood home, surrounded by boxes and looking every bit as overwhelmed as I felt. The air was thick with the dust of disuse and the poignant scent of my mother's perfume, which seemed to linger like a ghost. "Maria," I began, my voice more steady than I felt. "I need to understand how this happened. How did you come to be so important to my mom?" Maria looked up, her eyes red-rimmed from crying, or perhaps just exhaustion. "I suppose it's only fair you know," she said, gesturing for me to sit down. We settled into the living room, the same room where I had opened Christmas presents as a child, now a stage for a much less joyful revelation. As she spoke, Maria painted a picture of the last 5 years. She had started as a hired helper, but quickly became a companion and confidant to my mother, especially after my divorce when I was too caught up in my own life to visit often. "Your mother was lonely," Maria explained, "and she had her secrets, things she felt she couldn't burden you or Tom with." The conversation took an unexpected turn when Maria retrieved an old, worn envelope from a drawer. "She wanted me to give this to you if anything ever happened to her," Maria said, handing it to me. Inside was a letter, written in my mother's familiar scrawl. My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper, bracing myself for more secrets. The letter revealed the truth about Maria. She was more than just a caretaker. She was my mother's daughter, born from an affair that had haunted my mother with guilt and regret for decades. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Maria was my half-sister. This secret, buried for years, cast a new light on everything. The anger and suspicion that had surged through me began to ebb, replaced by an aching sadness for the mother who felt she had to hide her own child. Armed with this new understanding, I knew I had to share it with Tom, despite our strained relationship. Convincing him to meet was a challenge, but eventually he agreed, curiosity perhaps as strong a motivator as any. We met at a quiet cafe, away from prying eyes and overheard conversations. His initial reaction was disbelief, then anger, not towards me, but towards the situation and our mother's decisions. "Why would she keep this from us all these years?" he demanded, his voice thick with emotion. I didn't have all the answers, but as we talked, we began to piece together the fragments of our mother's secret life. It was clear that we needed to confront our feelings, not just about the inheritance, but about the very foundation of our family. As we left the cafe, there was a tentative truce between us, a mutual understanding that we were in this together. The next steps were unclear, but one thing was certain. The path to resolving our family's legacy would be as much about healing as it was about legal battles. The journey of uncovering the past had just begun, and I knew it would take us to places we never expected. The weeks following my discovery about Maria were fraught with tension. The secret of her true relationship to our mother had shaken the foundations of what little familial stability we had. While I was grappling with the reality of having an unknown sister, I was blindsided by a more immediate crisis. My ex-husband, Derek, had filed for full custody of our children. Derek argued that my deep involvement in family disputes and the recent upheaval had rendered me emotionally unstable and thus unfit to provide a stable home for Anna and Henry. His words stung with betrayal. It felt like yet another personal attack, orchestrated at a time when I was most vulnerable. As I prepared for the custody battle, my relationship with Tom reached a breaking point. It happened at a supposed reconciliation dinner he had organized. "We need to stick together," he had said over the phone, his voice oddly calm. But the dinner didn't go as planned. Midway through the meal, I confronted Tom about his missing wife, Linda. The circumstances of her disappearance had always been a mystery, but recent whispers and clues had led me to suspect Tom knew more than he had let on. "What really happened to Linda, Tom?" I demanded, my voice rising above the clatter of our plates. The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Tom's reaction was immediate and explosive. He slammed his fist on the table, causing silverware to clatter and diners to turn their heads. "You think I had something to do with it? But before he could finish, his new girlfriend, who had been silent until then, interjected, her voice trembling. "Tom, they found her purse, in the lake. When I was cleaning out the garage, The confession erupted from her in a rush, and the implications were immediate and horrifying. Tom's face drained of color. "I can explain," he stammered, but it was too late. The damage was done. The altercation escalated quickly, catching the attention of other diners and, unfortunately, the police, who were called to manage the disturbance. As Tom was questioned, the layers of his life began to unravel publicly. With my brother now entangled in a police investigation and my own custody battle looming, The stress was palpable. I felt isolated, cornered into defending my capability as a mother, while my family crumbled around me. The sense of betrayal was overwhelming, and for a moment, I wasn't sure I could handle the mounting pressure. In the midst of this chaos, Maria reached out. Her gesture was unexpected, given the circumstances of our connection, but it was also a lifeline. "You're not alone in this," she assured me over the phone, her voice steady and sincere. "Whatever happens, we're family now. Let's face it together." Her words, simple yet powerful, gave me the strength to push forward. Together, we began to piece together a plan, not just to defend my custody, but also to help Tom, despite his faults. It was a complicated web of legal and emotional issues, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't fighting alone. This newfound alliance with Maria marked a turning point. As we prepared to face the court, armed with evidence and united by a shared history, I realized that sometimes family isn't just about the past, it's also about who stands by you when the future is uncertain. The following weeks felt like navigating a labyrinth of emotional and legal challenges. As Tom's legal situation intensified with the investigation into Linda's disappearance, Maria and I dug deeper into our mother's past, seeking to understand the breadth of secrets she had kept from us. This exploration wasn't just about piecing together her decisions, it was also about preparing for my custody hearing by demonstrating the stability and support within my family, despite recent events. As Maria and I sifted through old photo albums and letters tucked away in our mother's attic, we stumbled upon a series of correspondences between our mother and a man named Eduardo, Maria's father. These letters, filled with love and regret, revealed the complexity of their relationship. Our mother had met Eduardo during a difficult period in her marriage, and their affair, though brief, had been a profound chapter in her life. "I always thought she regretted the affair because of the betrayal to Dad," I murmured, scanning the faded handwriting. Maria took a deep breath, her eyes not leaving the pages. "It seems she regretted the distance it created between her and you kids more than anything," she replied, pointing to a line where our mother expressed her fear of losing her family's love. The emotional toll of these discoveries was immense, but they provided a deeper understanding of our mother's actions, showing her not just as a parent who made questionable decisions, but as a woman grappling with her desires and duties. This narrative, I hoped, would help humanize me in my custody battle, illustrating the complex family dynamics that shaped my current situation. Meanwhile, the relationship with my siblings, especially with Tom, was deteriorating. After the public incident and his subsequent legal troubles, Tom had become withdrawn and suspicious of everyone, believing that we were all against him. Attempts to reach out and support him were met with hostility and paranoia. "Tom believes he's fighting a battle on all fronts," I explained to Maria one evening as we discussed our strategy moving forward. "He's lost trust in everyone." "It's like he's spiraling," Maria agreed, her voice laced with worry. "We need to find a way to bring him back, not just for his sake, but for the whole family's." The challenge was daunting. As the court date for my custody hearing approached, the strain of familial betrayal and the public scrutiny weighed heavily on me. My ex-husband's lawyer painted a picture of a family in disarray, using every scrap of our private drama to question my fitness as a mother. During the hearing, as I sat in the stark, unforgiving courtroom, I felt the eyes of the judge on me, measuring my every word and reaction. The evidence was laid out, my life dissected before strangers, my ability to parent called into question because of the chaos around me. It was one of the lowest points of my life, but it was Maria's testimony that shifted the tide. She spoke not only of our mother's character and her intentions, but also of my dedication as a mother, despite the extraordinary circumstances. Her words painted a picture of a family that, while imperfect, was fundamentally strong and supportive. As we left the courtroom, I felt a cautious optimism, but the victory was bittersweet. The family was still fractured, and Tom was still lost to us, caught in his downward spiral. The road to healing seemed more like a mirage, elusive and distant. Yet, amidst the legal battles and family conflicts, a new bond had formed between Maria and me. This unexpected sisterhood provided a glimmer of hope, a potential foundation upon which to rebuild. As we faced the uncertain future, I knew that whatever the outcome, the journey would require all the resilience and compassion we could muster. The tension that had been building over the past months reached its climax not long after the custody hearing. Despite the challenges, the court ruled in my favor, allowing me to retain custody of Anna and Henry. This small victory, however, was overshadowed by the dark cloud still looming over our family due to Tom's legal troubles. Tom's case had drawn out longer than anyone had anticipated. As evidence mounted and the reality of his possible involvement in Linda's disappearance became harder to ignore. Our family gatherings had grown more strained. However, Maria and I decided it was time to address these issues head-on, hoping to mend the fractures within our family, or at least understand them better. We organized a family meeting under the guise of discussing how to support Tom through his legal battles. Everyone agreed to come, unaware that Maria and I had a different agenda. We needed to confront the secrets, the lies, and the pain that had brought us all to this point. The meeting took place at our childhood home, now eerily silent and somber, a stark contrast to the warm and lively hub it had been in our mother's time. One by one, my siblings arrived, their faces etched with the same apprehension that I felt. Once everyone was seated, Maria took a deep breath and began, "We're not just here for Tom. We're here to face everything that's been tearing us apart. We can't ignore it any longer." The air was thick with tension as Maria and I revealed everything we had uncovered about our mother's past, her relationship with Eduardo, and the reasons behind her decision to leave her estate to Maria. We laid bare the letters, the photos, and the heartfelt entries from our mother's diaries. Tom, who had been silent up to that point, suddenly stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "So what? Are we just supposed to forgive and forget everything? Because of some old letters and a few tearful confessions?" "It's not about forgetting, Tom," I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil I felt inside. "It's about understanding why Mom did what she did, and figuring out how we can move forward without tearing each other apart." The conversation was heated, with old grievances resurfacing, but for the first time, it felt like we were actually listening to each other. The walls we had built, the assumptions we had clung to, began to crumble as we confronted our shared pain. As the hours passed, the conversation shifted from accusations to memories of better times, of the love that had once bound us together. It was Maria's gentle reminder of our shared loss, of the mother we all loved despite her flaws, that finally brought a measure of peace to the gathering. Then, the unexpected happened. Tom broke down, his tough exterior crumbling as he confessed his own fears and loneliness since Linda's disappearance. "I didn't know what to do," he sobbed. "I've been so lost." This raw, vulnerable moment acted as a catalyst for our family. Seeing Tom so broken, we could not help but reach out, offering support and forgiveness. It was a turning point, a step towards healing the deep wounds among us. As the meeting ended, there was a sense of exhausted relief. Though nothing was fully resolved and Tom's legal issues were far from over, we had started the process of healing. We had taken the first difficult steps towards reconciliation, driven by a newfound understanding and a desire to rebuild on a foundation of honesty and compassion. Maria and I exchanged a look of quiet resolve as everyone left. The road ahead was uncertain, but we were committed to facing it together as a family, no longer divided by secrets or pain. This was our new beginning, fragile yet hopeful. In the months that followed our transformative family meeting, the dynamics within our family began to subtly shift. The barriers that had once seemed insurmountable were now permeable, softened by our collective willingness to engage and support one another through the complexities of life. Tom's legal issues were still a looming concern, but with the family's support, he was able to navigate the process with more resilience. Legal proceedings are slow, and the outcome uncertain, but Tom's openness about his struggles and acceptance of help marked a significant change in his approach to life and our relationship. As for Maria and me, our bond grew stronger as we navigated our new roles within the family. We collaborated on handling the estate and made joint decisions on preserving our mother's legacy in ways that honored her memory and supported the family. This included setting up a scholarship in her name at the local community center, something that would make her proud and give back to the community she loved. The resolution of my custody battle had a profound effect on my relationship with my children. The stability and love in our home flourished as they adjusted to the new normal, reassured by the family's unity and my renewed focus on their well-being. They also formed a sweet bond with Maria, who embraced her role as their aunt with enthusiasm and love. Professionally, I found a new purpose in advocating for families dealing with similar legal and personal crises. Sharing our story publicly, I began to work with local support groups, providing guidance and support to others navigating the choppy waters of family conflict and legal challenges. This work was healing for me, turning my past pains into lessons and support for others. At a later family gathering, held in the now vibrant and warm atmosphere of our childhood home, I took a moment to reflect on the journey we had all undertaken. The room buzzed with laughter and conversation, a stark contrast to the somber, tense gatherings of the past. I raised my glass to make a toast, my voice clear and steady. To family, defined not just by blood, but by our choice to stand together through storms and calm seas alike. Here's to healing, to forgiveness, and to a future where we hold on to what brings us together, not what might drive us apart. The toast was met with cheers and a few teary eyes, and as I looked around the room, I saw not just the family I was born into, but the family we had become. We were still imperfect, with challenges ahead, sure, but we were united in a way that felt fundamentally new and profoundly hopeful. This was our resolution, not an end to the story, but a beginning to another chapter, one filled with the understanding that while the past may shape us, it does not have to define us. We were moving forward, together, and that made all the difference.